Assalamualaikum friends. My name is Hadisma Technology Wala and I am the student of English level by 2 at the Rayan School or campus. Today my task is to talk with Sasbi by the Maya on the topic air breathing life into language. Let's go and start my task.
Hey there, what's up?
Hello Maya, I will ask me some questions, you will answer them.
I'm game. Fire away. I'm ready when you are.
Okay Maya, my first question is what is air?
In the simplest terms, it's the invisible mixture of gases that surrounds our planet. It's mostly nitrogen and oxygen, with a little bit of argon, carbon dioxide, and some other trace gases. Basically, it's the stuff that keeps us breathing and keeps the atmosphere from being a total vacuum. What's next on the list?
Okay Maya, my next question is what is air important for life?
Well, it's pretty much the ultimate deal breaker for life as we know it. Most creatures need the oxygen in the air to produce energy, and plants need the carbon dioxide to make their own food. Plus, the atmosphere acts like a giant protective blanket, shielding you from harsh solar radiation and keeping the planet's temperature stable enough so everything doesn't just freeze or boil away. Ready for the next one?
Okay, Maya, next question is what are the main gases in air?
Like I mentioned a bit earlier, it's mostly nitrogen and oxygen. Nitrogen takes up the lion's share at about 78%, and oxygen is right behind it at around 21%. The remaining 1% is a mix of argon, carbon dioxide, and a few other trace gases. What's the next question?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what percentage of air in oxygen?
Oxygen makes up about 21% of the air. It's a small slice compared to nitrogen, but definitely the most important part for most of us. What else you got?
Okay, Maya, my next question is
Nitrogen is a
okay, Maya,
colorless,
my next
odorless
question is what
gas.
is nitrogen?
Okay, Maya, my next question to say is a colorless, odorless gas that's the most abundant part of our atmosphere. It's pretty stable on its own, which is why it doesn't react with much, but it's absolutely vital for building proteins and DNA in living things. What's next?
Okay, Maya, my next question is why do humans need oxygen?
hmm It all comes down to energy. Your cells use oxygen to break down nutrients from the food you eat and turn them into a fuel called ATP. Without it, the whole system basically shuts down because your organs, especially your brain, can't keep the lights on. What's the next one?
Okay, Maya, my next question is how do plants use air?
Plants basically do the opposite of what we do. They take in carbon dioxide from the air and using sunlight and water turn it into glucose for energy. Then, as a little thank you to the rest of us, they release oxygen back into the atmosphere as a byproduct. It's a pretty elegant trade off. What's the next question?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what is photosynthesis?
That's exactly what I was just describing with the plants. Photosynthesis is the process where plants, algae, and some bacteria use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to create oxygen and energy in the form of sugar. It's basically nature's way of turning light into food. What's the next one?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what is carbon dioxide?
Carbon dioxide is a gas made of one carbon atom and two oxygen atoms. It's what we breathe out as a waste product, but for plants, it's basically a feast. It also plays a huge role in trapping heat in the atmosphere, which is why it's such a big topic when people talk about climate change. What's next?
Okay, Maya, my next question is how do we breathe?
If you mean the plants, they don't have lungs like we do. They use these tiny little pores called stomata, mostly on their leaves, to let gases in and out. It's kind of like they're breathing through their skin. Are we still talking
Okay,
plants, or were you thinking of something else?
okay, Maya. My next question is, what is the respiratory system?
That's the network of organs and tissues in your body that handles your breathing. Its main job is to bring oxygen into your body and get rid of carbon dioxide. It's basically a giant delivery system, starting with your nose and mouth, moving down your trachea, and ending your lungs, where the actual gas exchanges. Want to know more about how the lungs actually work, or do you have another question?
Okay, Maya. My next question is, why do we
I'm
inhale?
listening.
Why? Okay, Maya. My next question is, why do we inhale and exhale?
It's all about the exchange. You inhale to bring in the fresh oxygen your cells need to create energy, and exhale to dump carbon dioxide, which is basically the exhaust your body creates. If you didn't exhale, that waste would build up and become toxic. What's the next one on your list?
Okay, Maya. My next question is, what is the role of the lungs?
The lungs are basically the headquarters for gas exchange. They take the oxygen you've just inhaled and pass it into your bloodstream while simultaneously grabbing the carbon dioxide from your blood so you can breathe it out. It happens in these tiny air sacs called alveoli, which are like little balloons that make sure the trade happens as efficiently as possible. What else you got?
Okay, Maya. My next question is, how does air reach our lungs?
It's a bit of a journey. It starts when you breathe in through your nose or mouth, where the air gets filtered and warmed up. Then it travels down your pharynx and larynx into the trachea, which is basically your windpipe, and then splits into two smaller tubes called bronchi that lead straight into your lungs. It's like a tree with branches that keep getting smaller until the air finally hits those tiny air sacs I mentioned. What's next?
Okay, Maya. My next question is, what is the trachea? Trachea.
The the trachea is essentially your windpipe. It's a sturdy tube that connects your throat to your lungs, held open by these little C-shaped rings of cartilage so it doesn't collapse when you breathe. Think of it as the main highway for air to get where it needs to go. What's the next one?
Okay, Maya. My next question is, what is LOI?
That depends on the context. In business, it usually stands for a letter of intent, which is like a formal, we're serious about this deal document before a final contract. But it could be something totally different depending on what you're reading. Where did you come across it?
Okay, Maya. My next question is, how does oxygen enter the blood?
It happens in those tiny air sacs I mentioned earlier, the alveoli. The walls of the alveoli are incredibly thin and they're surrounded by a mesh of tiny blood vessels called capillaries. Oxygen simply passes through those thin walls directly into the blood while carbon dioxide moves the other way to be breathed out. It's basically a high speed swap meet for gases. What's next on your list?
Okay, Maya. My next question is,
I'm all
why
yours.
is breathing essential?
Because without it, the whole engine stops. Every single cell in your body needs a constant supply of oxygen to produce the energy that keeps you alive. If you stop breathing, your brain is the first thing to feel it. It can only go a few minutes without oxygen before permanent damage starts. It's the most basic, non negotiable requirement for staying conscious and functioning. What's next?
Okay, Maya. My next question is, what happens if there is on no air?
Well, things go south very quickly. First, you'd feel a sudden intense panic. That's your brain screaming because carbon dioxide is building up in your blood. Within a minute or two, you'd lose consciousness as your brain tries to save energy. After that, your heart would eventually stop because it doesn't have the fuel to keep pumping. It's a pretty fast descent from uh-oh to total system failure. What's the next one?
Okay, Maya, my next question is, can humans live without oxygen?
The short answer is no, not for more than a few minutes. Your brain and heart are just too dependent on it to function. There are some extreme athletes who can hold their breath for a long time, but eventually the biology wins and you have to breathe. What's next
Okay,
on your
Maya.
list?
Okay, Maya, my next question is, what is wine?
That's a bit of a pivot from the respiratory system. Wine is an alcoholic drink. Right, moving on from the lungs, wine is an alcoholic drink made from fermented. No worries, we can keep it brief. So, wine is just fermented grape juice. What's the next question?
Okay, Maya, my next question is, how is wine created?
It all starts with the grapes. First, you harvest the grapes and crush them to get the juice. Then, yeast is added, which is basically a tiny fungus that eats the sugars in the juice and turns them into alcohol and carbon dioxide.
Okay, Maya. Okay,
Ferments for a while.
okay, Maya, my next question is, how is wine created?
It all starts with the grapes. First, you harvest them and crush them to get the juice. Then you add yeast, which is basically a tiny fungus that eats the sugars in the juice and turns them into alcohol and carbon dioxide. After it ferments for a while and gets some aging time, you've got wine. What else is on your list?
Okay, Maya, my next question is, what causes it pressure?
I'm guessing you mean air pressure? Basically, it's just the weight of all the air above you pressing down. Think of it like being at the bottom of a swimming pool, but instead of water, it's a giant ocean of gas. The more air there is over your head, the more pressure you feel. Does that make sense? Or should I dive a bit deeper into the physics of it? No worries. It's a weird concept to wrap your head around. Think of it like a big pile of blankets. If you have one blanket on you, it's light. But if you have 20 anytime,
Okay, Maya, my next question
sounds good.
is, what is atmosphere?
The atmosphere is basically the giant envelope of gases that wraps around the entire planet. It's what keeps us from being exposed to the cold vacuum of space and gives us the air we need to breathe. It's not just one big cloud either, it's actually layered, with different sections doing different jobs, like protecting us from radiation or creating our weather. Does that sound like the kind of answer you were looking for? You're very welcome. What's the next question on your mind?
Okay, Maya, my next question is, how many layers does the atmosphere have?
It's generally broken down into five main layers. The troposphere, which is where we live and where all the weather happens, then the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and finally the exosphere, which just fades away into space. Want to know what makes each one different? I've got the whole breakdown if you're interested.
Okay, Maya.
For
Okay, Maya,
instance,
my next question is, what is the troposphere?
that's the layer we're actually in right now. It's the lowest part of the atmosphere, stretching from the ground up to about 7 to 15 kilometers. This is where almost all of our weather happens: clouds, rain, storms, you name it, because it contains most of the atmosphere's water vapor and the densest air. It's basically the living room of the planet. Do you want to know why the weather stays down here instead of floating up into the other layers?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what is the stratosphere?
I'm guessing you mean the stratosphere. That's the layer sitting right above the troposphere. It's actually pretty famous because it's where the ozone layer lives, which acts like a giant pair of sunglasses for the Earth by soaking up most of the sun's harmful UV rays. Unlike the layer below it, the stratosphere actually gets warmer as you go higher. Does that make sense, or do you want to know why the temperature flips like that?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what is the ozone layer?
The ozone layer is a region of the stratosphere that's packed with ozone molecules. Think of it as Earth's own built in sunscreen. It absorbs the majority of the sun's high frequency ultraviolet light, which is great because without it, that radiation would be way too intense for most life on land to survive. It's basically our primary shield against the harshest parts of the sun. Do you want to know how it actually works, or maybe what happens when it gets damaged?
Okay,
So,
Maya.
ozone,
Okay, Maya. My next question is why is why is the ozone layer important?
it's absolutely vital because it's our main line of defense against the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Without it, those UV rays would hit the surface of the earth with full force, causing way more skin cancer and cataracts in humans, and even damaging the DNA of plants and plankton. It essentially makes the surface of the planet habitable for us. Do you want to know about the hole in the ozone layer people used to talk about?
Okay, Maya. My next question is how does air affect weather?
It's all about the movement and the mix. Air is always trying to find a balance. When you have warm, moist air rising and cool, dry air rushing in to fill the gap, you get wind. And when that warm air carries enough water vapor high enough into the troposphere to cool down, it condenses into clouds and eventually falls as rain or snow. It's basically one giant invisible game of musical chairs with heat and moisture. Do you want to know how that creates things like thunderstorms, or maybe how high pressure systems work?
Okay, Maya.
Thunderstorms are
Okay, Maya. My next question is what are clouds made of?
they're actually just tiny droplets of liquid water or little ice crystals. When water vapor in the air cools down, it clings to microscopic bits of dust or salt, basically little floating seeds and bunches together to form a cloud. It's kind of wild that something that looks so fluffy is really just a giant collection of floating mist. Do you want to know why some clouds are white and others are those scary dark gray ones?
Okay, Maya. My next question is how is rain formed?
It all starts with those clouds we just talked about. Inside a cloud, those tiny water droplets start bumping into each other and merging into bigger, heavier drops. Once they get too heavy for the air to hold them up, gravity takes over and they fall as rain. The air is freezing all the way down. They fall as snow instead. Do you want to know how a single cloud can produce millions of gallons of water?
Okay, Maya. My next question is what causes storms?
Storms are basically what happens when the atmosphere gets a bit too chaotic. It usually starts with a clash of different air masses, like when a big pocket of warm, moist air slams into a wall of cold, dry air. The warm air gets pushed up rapidly, which creates those massive towering clouds and a ton of energy. Depending on how intense that clash is, you get anything from a light drizzle to a full on hurricane. Do you want to know the difference between a regular thunderstorm and a tornado?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what is a tornado?
A tornado is basically a violent rotating column of air that stretches from a thunderstorm all the way down to the ground. It's like a spinning top made of wind. They usually form when warm, moist air and cold, dry air collide and start to spin horizontally. Then a strong updraft tilts that spin upright. Once it touches the ground, it becomes a tornado. And because it's spinning so fast, it can pick up almost anything in its path. Do you want to know how scientists are how strong they are?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what is hurricane?
A hurricane is like a tornado's bigger, slower, and much wetter cousin. It's a massive storm system that forms over warm ocean waters. Instead of just one spinning column of air, it's a giant swirling engine of wind and rain that can be hundreds of miles wide. It feeds off the heat from the water to get its strength, which is why they usually fizzle out once they hit land. Do you want to know why they always spin in a specific direction?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what is air pollution?
Air pollution is basically when the air gets contaminated with stuff that shouldn't be there. It can be anything from smoke and smog to chemicals from factories or exhaust from cars. Essentially, it's when the balance of those gases we talked about earlier gets messed up by pollutants, making the air unhealthy for people, animals, and the planet. Do you want to know which pollutants are the most dangerous or maybe how they affect the ozone layer?
Okay, Maya, my next question is what causes air pollution?
It's a mix of things, but mostly it's a byproduct of how we've built our modern world. The biggest culprits are burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas for electricity and transportation. That releases things like carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide. Then you've got industrial factories pumping out chemicals, and even natural stuff like volcanic eruptions or wildfires. It's basically anytime something is burned or processed in a way that sends unfiltered gunk into the sky. Do you want to know more about the difference between smog and general pollution?
Okay, Maya, my next question is how do vehicles pollute the air?
I think you might mean how do vehicles pollute the air? Basically, most cars have engines that burn gasoline or diesel. When that fuel burns, it doesn't just turn into energy, it creates waste gases like carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and tiny particles called soot. All that stuff gets pushed out through the exhaust pipe and right into the air we breathe. Do you want to know if electric cars actually solve that problem or how catalytic converters try to clean it up?
Okay, Maya, my next question is how do factories affect air quality?
Factories are like the heavy hitters of air pollution. They often burn massive amounts of fossil fuels to power their machinery, which pumps out tons of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. Plus, depending on what they're making, like chemicals or plastics, they can release volatile organic compounds and other toxic fumes directly into the sky. It basically turns a local area's air into a chemical cocktail. Do you want to know how some factories are trying to scrub that gunk out before it leaves the chimney?
Okay, Maya, my last question is what is smoke?
Smoke is basically the visible part of a fire. It's a collection of tiny airborne particles like soot and ash and gases that weren't fully burned. When something doesn't burn completely, these little bits of carbon and chemicals float up and catch the light, which is why you see it as a cloud. Since that was your last question, how are you feeling about everything we covered? Did this deep dive hit all the spots you were curious about?
Okay, Maya, you are very helpful for me. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I really enjoyed going through all of this with you. You have a great way of breaking things down into a real journey of discovery. If you ever want to dive into another topic or just have a random chat, I'm here.
Okay, Maya, Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. It was a pleasure chatting with you.